Hey, everybody, how's it going? Andrew here. And I just want to ask for a small favor, which is if you're a fan of the show, then share it with someone you know. Seriously, if you like the content, the topics, the guests that we have here on the show, and feel that what we're discussing is really helpful and beneficial for you, great. But then all that we ask for is if you think that could also help someone else, then just share it with them. In whatever capacity, whether it's a community, online, it doesn't matter. If you just feel that this is helpful for you and others can benefit from the content, then it would just mean the world to us if you could share it with them too. So that's it. Again, can't thank you so much for being such great listeners. And now let's get right to the show. Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas. I'm going to be your host today, and we're going to be talking about leveraging your brand across different arenas. All right, so in an industry where branding bridges diverse platforms and mediums, navigating the games industry's nuances presents lots of different challenges, but overcoming them can create lots of new opportunities. So today, join us as we delve into different strategies and perspectives that can guide your personal and company's brand seamlessly across different arenas, regardless of your stance, values, or even position. So we're going to discover how to leverage communication skills and forge authentic partnerships to propel your brand forward in the ever-evolving landscape of content creation in the game industry. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. Hey, everybody, and we're back. And today with us, I have Angelica Chapman-Sykes. Angelica, how is it going? And thank you so much for being on the show today.
Thank you so much for having me here, Andrew. Everything's going really well. I'm here in Madison, Wisconsin. We're finally getting some really good weather here in Wisconsin. So very, very happy about that. And I'm excited to be on your episode today.
Yeah, well, we're excited to have you. And likewise, we're getting some good weather finally. Actually today it was supposed to be rainy and I don't see it coming. Maybe it is later, but I will take it. So, and hopefully those listening today, wherever you are, your weather is looking rather well too. So that said, quick introduction here to our guest today, Angelica. She is a social media manager for Encantrix Productions. She's also the founder of Manifest Media, and the really interesting, cool thing, she is Miss Beloit, or of like the Miss America pageant. For those of you who aren't familiar with that, has accomplished so much in that. Some other past history stuff too is she was at PUBG Studios, as the Crafton branch, as an office manager, and on top of that, I mean, she's just super active in games and the community and everything else. Organization she's involved with is Madam Games for Love. And I think of these, one of them in particular, diversifying Steam through video games. That's something that you're doing yourself, correct? Could you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's called Game Changers Diversifying Steam Through Video Games. And I started Game Changers last year when I was Miss Beloit. So my reign as Miss Beloit just ended about 2 months ago.
Oh,
Sad
man.
face about that, but it was awesome. And every single pageant contestant has to have a community service project.
Oh, okay.
So mine just makes sense.
Yeah.
Some people do things that involves mental health or blood drives, or someone did something that involves like journaling. I wanted to tie mine into games. And while being in the video game industry, I really see how there is a lack of diversity. When I worked at my old job, I was the first and only Black woman in that studio. So I thought to myself, the best way to diversify the industry is starting kids out while they're young, letting them know about these opportunities, especially kids of color, kids of low income background, girls. Let them know that look, you can work in the video game industry in many different ways. So I went ahead and I put together these gaming workshops where I brought in some game devs, and the students were able to get a behind the scenes look of how games are made. And they got to do panels with the game devs, breakout sessions, and there was even a cool video game tournament. So I love doing that. And on the smaller scale as Miss Beloit, when I did a bunch of appearances, I would go to schools. Sometimes it will be like a 30-minute presentation, sometimes it'll be an hour, but I was able to really talk to the kids about, look, you don't have to be a software engineer in video games either. You can be a lawyer working in the industry, you can be a graphic designer. And I also went to these schools and let them know, like, hey, you can make your STEM classes more fun if you incorporate video games, because I learned uh, like how to code C++ through video games. And I think that would be really cool because video games is really great to use as an educational tool. So yeah, that's the basis of incorporating STEM into video game development and letting kids know, even if you don't want to be into games, you can still play video games that will teach you how to be like a doctor, like operation type of thing, or learn more about biodiversity. There's games for everything.
Yeah, you're so right, and absolutely love kind of that journey a little bit, or at least that snapshot of like, okay, you were doing Miss Beloit, you had this challenge like everybody else did, and then as part of it, and then you're like, wait a minute, I'm on to something here, and everything else, and then you continue with it, and I think it speaks not just volumes to what your efforts are doing, but it's also shared among the community of other people finding similar instances like you are in their own different ways and stuff. And it's just so awesome to hear that and have more people out there like yourself that are doing these things. And just, it's always great stuff. So thank you so much for sharing all that. I'll just call it too. It doesn't stop there, folks. She's been doing Angelica's been doing a lot of speaking events and everything too, like Level Up Expo, MDev. You were on Xsola panel. And obviously, of course, as part of the job, you do multiple appearances of like over, I think you mentioned earlier, like 200 as Miss Beloit. So it's like you're used to, getting around, speaking, sharing what you know, and now you're able to do that in a more fuller, bigger capacity with this efforts of Game Changers. On top of all the other awesome, amazing work that you do at your job and everything else that you've done up to that point. So just really, it will be really exciting to see more. Now, with that said, though, we want to get to know you a little bit more. And how we're going to do that, folks, is, of course, the Q-Box round. And for those of you who aren't familiar, just a quick few questions I prepared for Angelica today. And Angelica, are you ready for the Q-Box round?
Yes.
I love it. I can never get that sound effect down as well as I'd like to, like me personally, like trying to voice it. So I think that was pretty spot on.
Thank you.
I have yet to hear anyone else who has done better. So there's a challenge there, folks. Anyone who cares and is listening and wants to do that. Anyways, I digress. Question number 1. What was your childhood favorite game?
Lego Batman. I remember when I got my first PS2 and I played Lego Batman literally all day, all night, and I only stopped because my dad was going to take me to Chuck E. Cheese.
Well, I guess that's a good reason to stop. Incentive to to stop playing so much. I got to do that with my kids too sometime. But otherwise, all right, good choice. All right. All right, name one thing that motivates you every day.
Oh, one thing. I would just say potential. Living up to my potential in life, because I know that there's so much stuff I can do out here, and just being able to put myself out there is good. I was also going to say my dog, Maui. He's the other thing that motivates me every single day to wake up.
Oh, well, that's cute. And I know we all love our pets. But you know what? That's a good one. The potential, like to understand, to realize what your potential, what your value, what your worth is, because I don't think enough of us do that or think about that. So I think that's a really good and important one. A lot of us don't think about, because it's like, I'm not as important as so and so or this. It's like, no, you are. You have value. You just got to understand, realize that, and then keep moving forward. So I love that, because I don't think anybody else has really called out to that one before, but it's so true. I'm sure in different shapes and forms, but not quite as direct as that. Love it. All right. And last but not least, the staple here on the show is, what game are you playing now?
I'm playing BitLife. Uh, it's a mobile game. It's on my iPad since I travel a lot, and it's a life simulation game. So the character that I'm playing, she is a princess and she's worth over like $80 billion. And I wish that I was living that life in real life.
I love it. Like, and that's the enjoyable and fun things about these sim games. It's like it allows us to do something differently, and honestly, the thing I find that's really cool. Now, I don't play them that often, really, but what I find interesting about them when I'm learning about them is there can be a lot of like interesting things in there that you can incorporate into life in itself.
Mhm.
Like, a great example is any of those like management system games. Like, those are very applicable to how manufacturing is actually done. Maybe not directly, but it at least gives you a good perspective on those. So again, I think that's cool that you're enjoying it, having fun through, and then also I'm sure applying what you're getting from that in some way, shape, or form to your life, whether you realize it or not. That's how I like to. It's like you're always finding something new about games, even though when you're not doing things about games.
Yeah. There's a mode on there where you'll be a social media influencer. And when you accept different brand deals, your community reacts differently. Maybe you'll lose followers, you'll gain
Oh,
followers. So I've
yeah.
been using that for myself. Like, oh, do I take this deal? Will this relate to my followers or not?
Yeah, no, exactly. And see, there you go. Another way that it's applied, or at least you're thinking of it more, uh, appropriately as like, or not appropriately. You're just that much more aware of what the game is, and finding ways to apply it, which is really, I don't know. I'm at a loss for words, essentially, at how cool that can happen with playing games, and it's happened to me before where I found out. I'm not going to digress too much here, folks, but basically, I was playing Final Fantasy 12 much later after its release for like a few times. And then I realized through the Gambit system, my work was actually helping me leverage the Gambit system better. Because of what I did in work, I was able to apply it to video games. Go figure. At any rate, this isn't about me, it's about our guest today. So thank you for sharing all that information. But now, let's get into the heart of this conversation, which you were doing a great job segueing into, and I decided to disrupt us with my little story there, but about talking about, your brand, but specifically leveraging your brand across different arenas, because there's lots of ways we can use our brand. And what is our brand and all these things? Well, we're going to be talking about it today. So to kind of kick off this discussion, I mean, let's look at what we know. Let's look at what has really driven you, I feel, to this point. And that's, with your background in pageantry, how do you see branding and communication strategies differing or even converging between that world and the indie game space and, the game industry as a whole?
Yeah, I say with my background in pageantry, with branding and communication, I see it very intertwined in a way with gaming is the fact that you form a community of people. I am able to be like, hey, I'm this geeky, nerdy girl who also does a lot of other things too. And I'm also a Black woman in the video game industry. So I have a lot of other women and kids who come up to me and were like, hey, I love everything that you do. And we really want to like support anything that you put together. And with my whole entire communication strategy is just being personal. Uh, People like it when you're authentic. They don't want to see this cookie cutter perfect person. I let people know all the time. I make mistakes all the time, just like anybody else. And it's really nice when people meet me in person and they're like, wow, like you're actually super, super nice. And being able to also convey that online with just being goofy and having fun in my videos and in my posts, I think that's really good. And in the indie gaming space, a lot of people they want to play games that are relatable to them. They want to play games that they can see themselves and they can feel that they can form a community with people too. So that's my main strategy. And that's why I tell people just be real and let people know that you're being authentic.
Yeah, I absolutely love that because, well, a few things here. If again, us talking about pageantry is probably nothing I would have ever imagined to be at least somewhat discussed here on the show. But let's think about it. How do we think about that or perceive that? And I guess another way to look at it too is with, like, actors, right? They are there to perform, to act, to give off this potential, this specific look or characterization based off of their roles or what they're supposed to do for their work, right? And then it's like, but what are they in real life? And I think it's great that you're going about this with this perspective, not just because I agree with it wholeheartedly in terms of how it relates to, business and marketing, but also just as people, right? If it, especially when there's these stigmas, I think sometimes that are like, oh, that's just them because they have to perform or whatever. But it's like, I'm sure there's going to be some differences between those roles, but it's great to come forward and show how, no, you can still perform in that performing in that way or showcasing yourself that way. It can still be authentic, can still be true, can still be relatable, and all those other things. So it's just great on how that's happening. And on the same note too, it's like sometimes when we hear words like branding and what does it mean and how to present yourself, we might get caught in this idea that, oh, it's very complicated, it's not authentic and stuff. But the reality is, as you just simply laid it out, it can be really simple. And sometimes it's just a matter of realizing that and then leveraging the simplicity of it to inform decisions, strategies, those types of things, which I think is great. And again, we see this all the time, people coming from different industries, fields, and stuff. So absolutely love that you shared that. And with that said, though, I want to get into some more, specific conversations in terms of, let's say, let's talk about this brand thing more, like especially developing branding and these strategies that we talked about. So first one being, like, I'm just curious, what would you say are some key insights or even lessons that you learned from your pageant experience that you started to apply with your work in content creation and social media? How were you able to take that and apply it to this and the things that you're doing now?
Yeah, I one thing I really have to say is just try anything.
Mm.
I started doing pageants last year. A lot of people will look at me and say, "Oh, you've probably been doing this since you were a kid." No, I did it in honor of my cousin who passed away, and he really wanted me to get into pageants, and he was going to be my coach, but unfortunately, he wasn't able to. So I thought to myself, okay, I don't want to have any regrets, and I want to be able to do this and just have fun with it. So I tell people, you don't have to be perfect at anything. Just do it. Just try it. And with my pageant experience, being able to promote my whole entire thing about diversity in video games, being able to make videos and apply more information about game changers and more things about my own personality too. So That's like the key lesson I would say is even if something seems very, very goofy for you to try, just try it as long as it matches your niche. So for me, everything I do needs to go back to me being like a video game pageant girl in a way, because that's what my followers like. That's what more people who are part of this video game community, that's what they draw to, and even the pageant world too. So whatever I do has to go back to gaming and being this pageant girl.
I love that because sometimes when we think about these things, we often lead with, let's say, awareness. Okay, let's just create some awareness, right? And then the other time, some people might go a step further. It's like, okay, well, how are people going to interpret this? How is it going to relate with them and everything else? And then I think of the last step that a lot of people don't necessarily think about or whatever is leading with, well, what is my intent? What are my values? What represents me? And then align those two other things together. So what aligns with me, what aligns with other people, and then what ultimately creates the awareness. And I think it's that combination that ultimately gets you the most of what we're all looking for in the end: results, awareness, and those types of things. So I love how you call back to, again, it's just about this geeky gamer girl and everything else, and being proud of it, owning it, and then thinking, how can I take these aspects that are important to me and then starting to apply it to everything else I do in that authentic way, relatable, and then everything starts coming together then. But it sounds great because it's I think a lot of times what happens is we overcomplicate things.
Mhm.
Now, one thing I'm really curious about, just as maybe something that's a really good, not necessarily an example, but let's say, is there a particular, let's say, memorable moment or even a project where you know, something with your branding or how you were communicating with others, like, made a significant impact? And however you define that, it doesn't have to be like a number or results related, but was there ever a moment that was very memorable for you in, you know, executing this approach you shared with us?
That's just a really good question. Oh my gosh, this feels like a little pageant question I'm getting asked. um, I would say I used to work at a church when I first graduated college. I worked for a church and I was their communications coordinator. And I really liked the fact that I was able to help brand that this church was like a love and justice church. This church was different. They did a lot of community support, but a lot of people did not know that. So I was able to really showcase all the amazing things that they did through different Facebook posts, videos that I had the pastor make videos of, and really let the community know that, hey, this is going to be a very welcoming community for people. And I was able to help drive up the numbers of the amount of people who joined the congregation that year that I was there. So I would say just me just really being able to showcase everything that this organization was able to present to the community and bring in some people that maybe felt like a disconnect with churches, and they're like, oh, I don't want to be a part of them, but they will be like, hey, this is a congregation that I feel that I will truly be able to feel at home with. So that was one of my favorite memorable projects that I was able to work on, and just really seeing how that was able to grow over a course of a year.
Thank you so much for sharing that too. And I mean, let's break it down a little bit. What exactly was happening there? I mean, you came up to a challenge, and that challenge was, hey, this is our goal. We want to accomplish more of this particular goal, right? So it's like not just like having, of course, we just want, like, yeah, getting more of our community, building up our community
Mhm.
and members and stuff. That's great. But what part of that goal and objective was to showcase the church, I'm gonna interswipe some words here. Church game, with a particular focus, a USP, right? Which was a showcase to them that we're really big on, this particular. Geez, I forgot what you said. It was like community focus, or I mean,
yeah, they did a lot of community outreach.
Thank you, community outreach. So that's like maybe a USP. That's what that church's special ability was, right? That's what the game's special feature hook was. And by focusing on that, then, you go through the rest of the steps too, in terms of now you're, by doing that, you have that focus and drive, and now you start kind of connecting the dots for that purpose. So let's say serving an audience within a specific niche, finding people who don't feel a certain way because their needs aren't being served or met. And folks, it's no different than what we do, what we try to do in terms of like getting wish lists and getting all these other things. And sometimes, and the reason I wanted to call out to this for Angelica, which again, thank you for sharing that, such a great example, is because lots of times when we're questioning ourselves, how do we do these things in games and stuff? Again, sometimes it just goes back at some self-reflection on your past or yourself to be able to execute on these things and then get the results that you're looking for. So again, I absolutely love how you were able to incorporate that strategy and how together we can kind of like obviously connect the dots to say like, hey, this is how we can leverage these things from what we know and are true to ourselves and getting the results that we need with our games and all that stuff. Awesome insights. Now, as we talk more, I want to start talking more about kind of like just branding as a whole and even like broader branding things like partnerships, influencer marketing. Because I mean, these are all things that are associated with brands. These are all things that are obviously hyper valuable and important to us as studios, developers, and anyone else that's in this industry. So as we start talking about, more on the front of brand partnerships and streaming, I mean, this is kind of more of a little bit more of a focus for you now than I think what some of your other endeavors and efforts have been up to this point. So I'm curious, like, what prompted this particular transition, and what are some of the challenges or even opportunities that you've encountered so far?
Yeah. A lot of it prompted was the fact that at my old employer, I was not able to really feel like I was able to grow there.
Hmm.
And when I was there, I was working, was like, oh, I'm not being treated as well as I wanted to be treated. And I thought to myself, why won't I just do everything I've been doing on my own? Why am I waiting on other people to give me an opportunity? I can go ahead and create my own opportunity. And I thought about being Miss Beloit. I've already been doing community work. I've already been doing speaking engagements. I've incorporated video games and pageantry together and gotten a group of people that were super interested in this. So I quit my job on a whim one day.
Wow.
I quit my job on February 8th. And my sister came up from Florida and was like, "Look, we're gonna make this happen." She was telling me I have so much talent, so much drive that whatever I want to do, I can accomplish. Look, I competed in pageants last year, my first year ever doing them, and I ended up winning a pageant that's in the Miss America um, organization. I've competed with people that competed in 16 pageants and never won. So she's like, if you put your mind to it, you're able to go ahead and do this. So, with that being all said, I told myself, hey, I want to make this transition into being an influencer. I want to make the transition into starting streaming soon. And it it's now May. I'm doing pretty well, but it's still a lot of learning that's going on because influencing marketing, just getting into it, I have been able to look at a lot of resources online, but it still feels kind of like the Wild West in a way of how to do things. Had to learn more about contracts, good thing that my uncle's a lawyer, so he's able to look them up for me. Had to learn more about negotiating my rate for different posts or partnerships, and just really knowing the type of impact that I'm able to make out there. I dealt with a lot of underestimating myself and being able to see if I post about a restaurant here in the Madison area, I have people that will go to that restaurant because I post about it, and just learning about the influence I had. So that's been a lot of challenges. And right now, I just had a talk with my sister yesterday. She's my business manager, and I told her, I was like, "Is this the right thing that I'm doing? Because I can I can get a full-time salary job and make way more what I'm doing right now and have something a little bit more stable." And she gave me this analogy. It was like, there's this picture of this man who's digging for gold. And he keeps digging, and he's like, "Oh, I'm not gonna reach it there." And it wasn't until probably like one more dig for him to get there, he will hit the gold. But he quit before it happened. And she told me, even though like February, March, April, May, it's been 3 months since I've quit my job, that I am still doing so much more work. I may not be making as much money as I anticipated, but she's like, it's not even about the money, it's about your happiness. And soon that you're going to get to that point where you're going to pop off and get bigger. And especially in the gaming space, that she says that there are people who look up to you. There are people who need a role model like that in this space. So doing all that marketing for myself has just been a whole entire learning experience for me. And it's cool too, to bring it back to games. I've been working with Incantrix Productions. They have a game called Romance. Their their parent company is called Romancing Jane, which is part of um, Rainbow Uniform Games. And no, it's Romancing Jan. Sorry, y'all. And it's a Regency game. So they're going to have an in-person event where you're basically acting like you're in like a Bridgerton, Jane Austen inspired universe. And I love afternoon tea time. Check me out on Instagram. It's always me having some tea. So thinking of ways of, okay, how can I market this so people will come to this event? All right, what is the type of audience we want here? What's the area here? And even having that unique challenge of marketing this event and then soon marketing the game has been a lot of fun. And being able to talk to people that would message me on Instagram and be like, "Oh my gosh, this is the type of game that I've been looking for." So it's been a really, really cool, unique journey.
It definitely has been. And you know what? There's some really great things that I think came out of that. One, it honestly, it just goes right back to the Q box round, like what motivates you, and it's like understanding and living up to your potential. You had a point in your life where you're like, do I really want this? And the realization was, well, I think I can do more by creating my own opportunities. And while your journey can be very different from everybody listening here, and everybody's journey is going to be different, the fact that you are identifying that is, I think it's something that we all do in some way, shape, or form. But then it's like back to the potential part. It's like asking yourself, in what else? Now, within means, you don't want to like say, well, yeah, I could do everything and then burn myself out. Well, that's not the point. But it's like, what else? Okay, you got to that point. Great, you made that little step. You made that little accomplish. Okay, now what else? What and you keep
Mhm.
asking that. You keep, and then through that process, which it sounds like you went through something very similar. You create your own opportunities, and when you create your own opportunities, then everything else that seems like a problem or a concern or anything else slowly starts going away, and then the path gets clear and you look at it again, you're like, okay, and what else? Right. And then it's like
Yeah.
that one up notch and everything. And I mean, sometimes we look at time and it's like, oh, it's not happening at as fast as we'd like it, but that's kind of part of the process. And also it's like with creating those opportunities though, and looking at things that way, it's also about how you can ultimately gain more control. There's always going to be something outside of your control, right? We have to face that fact it's going to be the case. But through creating those opportunities, you're also creating more control. With more control, more opportunity. It's like this awesome, crazy cycle that keeps going on. So,
Yeah. And it's nice being able to choose the type of projects I want to be a part of. Since I left, my old job, I've been having a lot of companies reach out to me that were like, "Hey, we want you to stream our game. Hey, we want you to do our social media. We want you to be a game dev." And now I'm able to say, "Okay, which project am I able to take on?" Because if I'm going to do work for someone, I want to make sure that I'm able to put my all into it and just not like halfway do it. So that's been nice, and able to think of what actually brings me joy. Is this project, is it going to feel like work for me when I do it? Or is it also going to feel like a fun side quest that I'm taking on?
yeah. And you know what? It's really great that you're approaching it that way and doing it that way. And I know sometimes there might be people there, applying your story and their own to their own in some way and being like, well, what if this is the only option that I have now? I mean, because you know what? I've been there myself too. Um, like, I guess for people that are asking that question, what would you say? Because I have some ideas and thoughts, but I'm just curious what your perspective is.
You have to think, sounds cliche, but you have to think out the box. Opportunities are limitless out there. I felt I had this limiting belief that I would not be able to find another job in the industry because of all the layoffs that are happening right now.
Mm.
I was applying to a lot of different companies and no one was getting back to me. Or a company that I had an interview for, they ended up having a mass layoff. And I felt very stuck. And I just thought to myself, you know what? I might as well just take a chance on myself. Just just do whatever you think you can do. Even even if it's like a side project for yourself. Set time outside of your day, maybe like an hour when you're done with work, or a couple hours a week to work on what you want to do, to work on your passion, because soon it's going to end up getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and you're able to go ahead and just focus on that full time. But it just really starts with not having this belief that I can't, I can't, I can't. I try to think of, how can I do something? How can I make something happen?
Yeah, no, and I don't think it could be even better said. Just when those moments happen, it can be very, very easy for that limiting belief to surface, then to like that inner critic, that
Mhm.
whatever it is that's telling us that it can't be done. And it's not just fluff though, is what I want to say, because I know some people might think that, but it's also just that constant reaffirmation is, and I think I've shared this point in various contexts, is it's basically how your brain works. Your
Mhm.
brain is receiving lots of different signals to do everything that it does, walking, right? Everything. But if you stop walking for 6 months, the chances, and outside of just muscle fatigue and everything else alone, the chances of you being able to walk like you were 6 months ago, well, it's not going to be the same period. I think everybody could, but it's not just because of that. It's because your brain just hasn't had that input or feedback, just saying, I can do it, I can do it, I can do it, because you've been doing it all the time, every day, whatever. And the same thing goes to if you're not taking action. If you keep telling yourself you can't do something, it's like, what was it? Henry Ford, I think, said it like, if you can or can't, if you say you can or can't, you're right.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's as simple as that. So even on a more scientific thing that I'm totally not have the credentials for or anything, but just from what I know, it's just that's how your brain works too, which goes back to all these other things that you're saying and everything
Yeah.
else. So
And speaking on that, I have vision boards. Uh, I made a vision board at the beginning of this year and it has GDC on there. I ended up going to GDC. I figured out a way to go there. I have a thing that says, how much money can I make from streaming? Soon I'm going to start streaming. I have indie companies that want me to be their streamer already. I have positive affirmations all around my apartment for me. So whenever I do feel down and I have like that little seed of doubt try to form into my mind, I tell myself I can do this. I just look at it. And it goes back to the whole, I'm a little woo woo for this, but manifestation. I love journaling. I love visualizing how things are going to go. Of course, you can't control everything, but it's nice for your brain to at least have that image of your mind of, okay, this is how my life is going to want it to be. And even starting your own company too. Just visualize how you want your company to go, how you want your company to be in the next year, in the next 5 years, and have that game plan out there all around you. To just have that constant reminder that you can go ahead and do this. Yes, it's going to take work, but if you put it in there, you can do that.
I absolutely love it. And you know what? As you were sharing the whole concept of visualization, I mean, what came to mind too, that's no different. And I know many people have done this, but the one that was top of mind was Arnold Schwarzenegger. When he wanted to be a bodybuilder because he saw this at the time, I forgot the guy's name. He was a prominent bodybuilder and he was a movie star. And he's like, I want to be him.
Mhm.
And he took posters of him. And I think if I remember this correctly from this documentary, his like father or something was like, geez, usually young teenage boys have posters of girls on his wall. And here Arnold has all of this one guy. but, but the point was, it's like, he made, that's like almost an, similar maybe to an affirmation in a way, but more of a visualization. Like that's what I wanted. And he achieved that and more. And what else? Right. Became the governor of California once.
Yeah, it reminds me of my Beyonce pictures all around my apartment too. I know. I just think about all the work that she put into being who she is now, and I tell myself, okay, I'll be my own Beyonce in my own type of way.
Yeah, yeah. Awesome stuff. So, with that last part though that you were sharing, I'm curious and I'm gonna kind of do this on the fly here a little bit because I think it's gonna be more valuable and applicable. But like, as you were sharing, and for people listening to now, how would you, I don't know, suggest or whatever in terms of let's think of games. Let's think of our the audience of the show, the listener base, and everything. Like, from what you shared with us in your experience, how would you approach people out there wondering, like, hey, how do I take my brand or what is that and align that with, let's say, because a lot of what we talked about really derived from a personal brand, right? Your personal brand. What
Yes.
was you? So how do we take that personal brand, those values you shared with us and everything, and now apply it to an entity brand? Less of corporate talk here, folks, but how do you apply it to your studio? How that represents itself, how that looks, you as a solo dev or whatever. How would you apply this concept of your personal brand, providing it to your brand, your company brand, and beyond in terms of how you could do biz dev, how you can market your game? Like what are some key things you think that we can align and tie these things together?
Yeah, I know for me, I like seeing the crew that is making the game. I love learning more about the developers, learning about why they work for this company, learning more about how they came up with this concept of this game and what is pushing them to create this game. So, having that approach of maybe even having people on your dev team make a quick 30-second video about what they love about working for this company and the project that they're working on is a way to market it and have people be more in tune to like, oh, I want to try this out. I want to look more into this. And having it more aligned with your personal brand and values is, I think a lot of gamers are being more conscious about the companies of one, how they treat their employees and about the social community work that these companies are doing. So I'll give a quick example. I like following companies that are very thinking more about their environmental standpoint of their carbon emissions that they put out there. I like learning more about the companies that put more emphasis on the community work that they're doing. Like, hey, we have a volunteer day for all of our employees. Kind of giving like that behind the scenes look of, yes, this is what we do as a whole, but we also do a lot of other cool things too. I think that's really good of pushing that value onto the consumer and letting them know like, hey, they make a dope game and they're also a really dope company that I feel good supporting.
Yeah, and it's a great point. And while I know not everybody might not necessarily think of terms, let's say specifically that, but again, you were just providing examples from your own experience. There's other ways to take that approach. Like, what else can you do? I think another great example too that developers have done out there, that are, let's say, more established are, hey, you know what? I went through this. I know how trying it was of a time for me to get to where I am now. So why not be either an influencer, create courses or other things
Yes.
that the other community members can benefit from, so they don't have to go through the trouble that I went through that process. Or, even if it's more direct, let's say to the whole marketing thing, we really care about, what is it? I think, maybe this might not be the best example, but I know with like Stray Fawn Studio, The Wandering Village, when I've worked with them in the past, one of the key things that Philomena called out to one of the co-founders is that they were, I think her especially, but other team members too, I believe, were very big and into biology. I think especially for her growing up, she loved biology. She loved that concept. She loved like the symbiotic of things. And how, so that was a big, huge, heavily influence in the game, but it also broadened beyond in terms of everything from partnerships to other things in
Mhm.
terms of like, what are these types of really impactful and meaningful relationships? And this all stemmed from a science interest she had, applying it to a concept in a game. And then this is like almost a universal theme that really carries out through the studio and beyond in terms of their participation or what else they're doing in the greater community and everything. So just again, some other examples of, and there's no right or wrong answer, folks. It just comes down to what you were saying all along, Angelica, from the beginning, is just like being authentic. And there's lots of ways to do that, incorporating into yourself, your brand, and carrying it out so it's just more of a meaningful experience for everybody with games and beyond games.
Yeah. Like you're even saying, having like Q&A sessions. Yo, I definitely will hop on a Instagram live if my favorite video game company was having a Q&A session.
Yeah. And again, even if you're not at that state where you think that, oh, I don't have enough followers, I don't have a big enough community to do this, that, or the other thing. I mean, what's your answer to that, Angelica? Because you already said it before.
Just gotta go ahead and do it.
Yeah.
I guess, I'm still in it from Nike, but just do it. You don't know unless you try.
Yeah.
I do so many things and I'm like, oh, no one's gonna care about this. But I do it because it brings me joy. And then there's people who come up to me and was like, hey, I'm very, very happy that you went ahead and did this because I learned a lot from you. Or I was able to meet somebody in your group that showed up to your event and now we're friends.
Yeah.
So just go ahead and try it out. It may even sound goofy, but just do it. If you don't let fear hold you back. That's the main thing about it.
Yeah, absolutely love it. So many good things there. And, considering that we're coming on time here and we talked a lot about like really meaningful, impactful stuff. Would you have like any, tips, suggestions, advice, whatever you'd like to share, insights in terms of what we discussed here today?
Yeah, I would say the first one is make sure that you surround yourself with other people who are supportive of you, other people that may have like similar goals or aspirations, and even people who may be higher up than you in a way. So I get to talk to a lot of successful business owners and able to learn ways from them and be a part of other pageant girls that are into STEM like me too. And just doing that really gives me that reassurance of, okay, I can do this. And if I need help with anything, I have a community around me.
Mm.
My other tip is just post. Make sure everything goes back to your niche, goes back to your values, your brand identity, but make a creative post in different ways. Just tie it back into there. And the third thing is don't let your limiting beliefs hold you back.
All so well said and everything. I mean, and again, I know we didn't talk about it, but the whole point about surrounding yourself with people that support you, I mean, such a big deal. And then the part where you say like, or even people that are a little bit above where you want to be type
Mhm.
situation, what you just touched upon without saying is that's like mentorship, folks. It's very similar in that type of way, but that support network can really make all the difference. But again, so can all these other actions. Just post and everything else. Just really, really great points. Well, Angelica, I can't thank you enough for being here today. But before we close, do you have any links or ways that people can reach out to you, follow you? Please give us some info here where people can check out more of what you're doing or follow you.
Hey, yeah, you can all reach me on Twitch. I mean, start being a streamer at Angelitoast. It's ANJELLYTOAST. Also on my Instagram at Angelica Beloit, ANGELICABELOIT, and hit up my LinkedIn at just Angelica Chapman-Sykes. And if you have any questions, email me at angelicabeloit@gmail.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for that. And folks, really, if you're looking for someone to get inspiration, maybe to cover your game or other, please feel free to reach out to Angelica. And again, Angelica, can't thank you enough for being here today. This is so insightful and meaningful. And quite frankly, I feel like we don't necessarily talk about these types of things enough on the show. So I'm glad you were able to be part of this conversation here on the podcast. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrew, for having me. Bye, everyone.
Hey, everyone. Thank you for listening to another episode of Indie Game Movement. I'm Andrew Pappas, your host, and the show's producer is Mustafa Price. Show notes for this episode can be found by visiting rengenmarketing.com, the number episode of the show. Rengen Marketing is a consulting marketing company that helps indie devs with their marketing efforts. Whether you need guidance with your game's marketing strategy or could use a free marketing plan template, then please visit www.rengenmarketing.com and take action. A special thanks to Dakota Saw for Season 2's opening theme and Melissa Gellis for the new logo design. And as always, thanks for being such great listeners, and we'll see you next time on Indie Game Movement.